members. Thank you all, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for being so alert this morning. We're all here, and some of you heard this conversation with these two greats last year. But we're all here because Bill touched our lives.
Are there repeats?
There's
Can you win this twice?
There's a few.
You can?
That's how good you were.
Wow. Yeah. No, I mean, like, they can actually win it twice.
Yeah.
I thought you opted, you
No, but you know
aged
what?
out.
No, you don't. You never age out.
You can just keep winning Campbell trophies over
one of the
and
great-
over and over.
One of the great
I'm a
things.
10-time Campbell Trophy Award winner. How many times can you win? I guess 4, right? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That means you've been in college for a long time, right?
No, we were 4 and out, right?
Yep, 4 now.
See, we weren't these guys that go 11 years, That's why I guess we're here. Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
I just didn't know.
Read his book, by the way. I'll give an open plug. I just
That's
finished
right.
Steve's book.
Great book.
Steve's book is extraordinary and
Yeah.
really an amazingly open. I've said the tennis player Andre Agassi, who I've been around in my life, wrote the most incredible memoir I've ever written in terms of being open.
He was
Very-
actually, when
very
I started
close.
doing it, I did it for my kids, because I want my kids to know, because my boy kept coming home from school and saying, hey, I heard a story about you and Joe Montana, and you punched him in the face, and then he kicked you in the groin. I'm like, no, we never did that. And it kept coming more and more stories that weren't true. I was like, I better write something down, or he'll never know the truth. And so I started a whole book about my whole life for him and my other kids. And then when they wanted to publish it, I said, I don't want to publish it.
So tell me the truth.
It's the truth. We did not. You know the truth. We never punched each other. That was never.
So real quick, and I'm the guy that's not supposed to be up here, so I'm going to step out of the way in a second and let these two greats talk. But just because Bill was so important to all of us, and Bill touched all of our lives, including, and I know we have several women in the audience, my daughter, who works at Google to this day, an incredible start helped by Bill. He was an equal opportunity champion and pusher. He helped women, not transitioning obviously from football, but from her college life and the career path she first chose to where she is today. But Bill told a story a couple of times when you could get him to open up about and say some things publicly. He told one story that I think Steve and Ronnie can relate to. It was one of his years as a CEO. A tremendous decision is pending. Bill's the CEO, so he has to make the decision. He tells his team, his senior team, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to meet, and everybody airs it out. Get it out, say your points, everybody pros and cons, and then Thursday morning we'll meet and I'll announce the decision. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they have their sessions, they go through everything, everybody vents. Thursday morning they gather back in the same room and Bill says, all right, here's what we're going to do, here's the direction. And as he's beginning his explanation, one of the seniors raises his room, but Bill, I don't think you thought fully about this blowback or this ramification. So Bill stops. He looks at him, he says, John, come on outside in the hallway with me. So they step outside and he goes, John, listen, I'm going to give you an hour to clean out your office, and then we're going to escort you out the building. We love you for being here. Thank you so much, but now you're not on my team. It's time to go, and you're not with me, so you're gone. And Bill told the story, and it's not like Bill, except if you knew him, it really was, because it would be like Steve Young calling the play in the huddle and Harris Barton piping up and saying, no, Steve, you can't run that play here, and you've got 22 seconds to do it.
That happened.
But it was amazing.
I had to ask him to leave. So
There you go.
Makes sense.
But it was an amazing story that Bill would tell about where at some point you're on a team. And I know you're going to hear a lot about that later today from some very experienced people.
So here we are, and just looking around the room. What are you willing to die for? And I want you to think about that. If you think about the commitment and the pursuit, I always find that it's really fascinating to me is because everybody talks about how great they are and what they want in life and what they want to achieve. And then you get a chance to meet a Navy SEAL. And when you get a chance to meet him, and I was with one this past weekend, and we started talking, and this person asked him, how do you think about some of the things that you have to do He says, you know what? Man, some of the things I have to do, they're evil. But I do it because I have to protect you. And the hardest part to me is what I just heard, is that when you hear something like that, there are sacrifices that sometimes you got to make. But in this room, I want you guys to start realizing that the greatness of this room is your relationships with each other. And if you don't find the time to get to know and talk and understand each other, that's why I love this dude. The reason I love him is that he didn't have to take the time to tell people the stories and the challenges that he was going through and to talk about the weakness of his life. But that's what you guys have to do. Greatness comes from opening up yourself. It doesn't come from a moment when you think you have to take the hill. It's a moment when you share your weakness. And that's one of the great things about Bill is Bill could find you in moments where you were weak, and he would lift you up. He would find moments when you were down, and he would cuss you out. But he was always there. And the reason this group of guys and all of you in this room, the reason that I came back and the reason I wanted to be is because of this guy right here and because of that guy, but more importantly, Bill. And the reason why is that he's one of those teammates that's for life. For life. And when you have a teammate for life, which I just lost a teammate, and when you see teammates, you got to play for life. If you got anything inside you, you will play for that teammate for life. That's a hard thing to do. So my buddy here, we were talking the other night, and he got me fired up. And he got me fired up is because he did something that he thought that he couldn't do. He sat with Archie Manning, and when he went to sit with Archie, Archie lifted him up. Archie went out of his way to lift him up. So that's why in this room, you never know. You never know. You never know what a teammate will do for you. You never know what a teammate will help you. And in this community, if we're really who we think we are, you will find a way. You will find a way to go out of your way, like Bill Campbell, no matter what the situation is, to figure it out, to help somebody. And again, the reason that you want to read his book, to me, is that you see yourself realizing that sometimes you got to figure it out. And you got to find a way to lift yourself up to help others. And that's what made him a Hall of Famer, because, yes, it was tough being behind Joe. At the same time, he never let it affect his resolve in himself. And in this room, there are going to be moments where you're going to have somebody in front of you that's going to affect your resolve. I've had moments where I've had people in front of me that have affected my resolve because of my color of my skin. And I've had to sit there and I've had to find ways to move forward. I've had to find ways to allow them to know that I'm great. And so, whatever the obstacles are in this room, We need each other. We need each other to help each other win. That's what I'm hoping, that when we come back, we start to build some values about all of us. We're starting to, because we got some sense of that, some smell last year. You should have some values that you can share with all the guys. The other day I was watching Hard Knocks, and the guy said, write down 10 things that you believe and put it up on your wall. And I was sitting here going, wow. Now, if I asked Charles Haley to write those 10 things down,
Today you'd get a good list.
I would get a great list. And the reason I know I would get a great list is because I understand all the things that he thinks about that are really unbelievable around winning. And so my point to you is that winning, for a lot of us, can be a lot of different shades, a lot of different colors. And for him, in his journey from, I remember watching your first game when you went to, what's that team in Los Angeles?
You went to the games?
Yeah, I went to that game. I was there because my buddy.
You didn't pay, though.
I didn't pay. No, I didn't.
No one paid.
No one paid to watch that game.
Only 14 people.
Yeah.
I had to move the huddle back because it was so quiet. I had to make sure that no one, defense wasn't listening in.
You got to tell them about your journey, man. That moment.
That's a great book, by the way. The book just came out.
But that moment was think about that journey. You're a professional, and you don't go to the National Football League. You go to a new league. Tell us a little bit about that, because to me, I think that's something that took courage to do something that a lot of people would say, why would you do that?
Well, I wanted to play. It was weird. I knew that I'd been behind Jim McMahon, who's one of the greatest quarterbacks he's probably the greatest quarterbacks in college history.
Right.
72 NCAA records he held, and technically one of the great quarterbacks. I'm lefty, he was righty, and I did the Phil Mickelson thing. I would watch him, and then I could do what he did and copy it, and that's how I learned to play. I would have known nothing about playing quarterback without him. And so, but I realized when I was lousy at watching, and if I had to watch, you had to force it. Like I would have no interest in watching. And so the idea that I could go play rather than sit behind Ken Anderson and the Cincinnati Bengals had the first choice, and coach came out and said, we're going to draft you number 1, and you can watch Ken Anderson. I was like, you mean I can go play in Los Angeles? And so that's why, a lot of reasons why I went. But there happened to be on our team, the LA Express, there was 2 future Hall of Famers, myself and Gary Zimmerman.
Right.
So I was like, we weren't like complete slouches,
No, but that's what I'm saying, though, is that think about here you are, 2 Hall of Famers, but your story and your journey changed because you decided to go in a different direction. And one of the things that I love about life is that a lot of us in this room will go in different directions, and yet we will eventually get to the top of our profession.
And I have to be completely honest, going back to my book, we talk a lot in my book about anxiety because I grew up with a severe separation anxiety where I wouldn't go in anyone else's house. I would stay, during the day I was a killer, and then at night I was like, woo, gotta go home. And I didn't know what that meant as I got older and older, but one of the reasons why I went there too is I knew people in LA. I didn't know anyone in Cincinnati, And so the fear of the unknown, I needed some safety, and I actually chose that in some ways for safety. So, we talk a lot about boldness, but it's also about survival. You have to find those places where, my son has a little bit of this, and so we always talk about there's things that you just cannot do right now. But there's a lot of things that you can do that are really hard. Those are the ones we got to do now. Because we'll get to the ones you can't do. We don't do those today. But the ones that really kind of like a hairy suit that we got to lean into, we got to start doing those. And so I think learning to do hard things, and that's what I think you're describing, a lot of it, there's resolve, there's challenges, but there's a knowledge that you can do hard things. And even if you don't know that you can do hard things, you know that you want to do hard things. And almost all you have to have is a desire, a small desire to do hard things, because they're coming. And you can go around them, and go right through them. And you guys have chosen, you're sitting here because you generally feel like, I saw something hard, I went right through it. So you know what I'm talking about. But that doesn't end. And it's got to keep going. And Ronnie's made a lifetime of going through hard things. In fact, I think sometimes you think you're like, I like hard things.
No, I think one of the hardest parts in life is that when you think about hard things, and then you, again, if you're a SEAL and you imagine yourself laying in the ocean and the water keeps coming over you and it keeps coming over you and it keeps coming over you and it keeps coming over you, and you feel like you're going to drown at some point. And the resistance of understanding the mentality of not getting afraid of that moment, or the resistance of finding yourself, and as I've seen a number of times, people ask me, why did you cut your finger off? And I'm like, well, there are many guys that are in the SEALs that will say, I had to, because that's what we do. And so we all have emotions around certain things that we want to accomplish. Love to hear your perspective. What's your name? Stand up, Mark.
Uh-oh. Poor Mark.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
I'm from Akron, Ohio. Actually, my dad might have played against you for the Packers back in the 80s.
Oh, of course you did.
Yeah, they brought Burke Ball.
Where's that, your dad?
Yeah, that's my dad.
Wow.
But,
Yeah, he was. I know your dad.
I don't know if that's a good thing or bad.
No, it's a good thing. He was super strong and not as fast. He's our friend, so he's good.
Still the same to this day. I work full-time in software development. Last year I started a nonprofit for underfunded local schools, and that's kind of what I'm up to nowadays.
So tell me about what you get out of that experience of being able to talk about a nonprofit that you started.
I mean, for me, there's nothing better than just giving back. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of things that I didn't have to think about growing up. You know, whether it's just like simple stuff like deodorant and body wash, or cleats for football practice, that kind of thing. And a lot of kids necessarily don't have that, so being able to level the playing field a little bit is just really nice to see, and it brings a lot of light to some communities, and it's just really impactful, not just on the community but on myself.
So imagine if we all around this room just said, before we leave, we supported you. Think about that. Now, I know this. I don't know what that's like. I grew up in a military family. We had pretty much everything that we needed. But you're giving somebody an opportunity to have something. So, man, congratulations on what you're doing. But again, as a collective, that's an opportunity for all of us. You can count me in, man. I mean, your dad and knowing you now, we're better for it. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, say hi to your
Thanks,
dad. That's great.
Hey, let me steer something for our remaining time here because of the bulk of this room. Next Friday, there's going to be over 1,100 men sent home from NFL camps. Next Friday, one day. It's a lot. And all of them can play. You guys all know, everybody in this room knows that. But their time's not right, or maybe it is the time for them to move. And I asked somebody yesterday at the 49ers who did their master's in player development. I said, what did you learn when you studied about this phenomenon? And he said, the most dominant trait was not prepared. That too many young men were not prepared to make that step that all of you have a head start in taking here. You said a great line here last year, Steve, when we talked about what your dad taught you about making that transition, whether it's when you want to or whether someone forces it on you. It's a
I'm
great
trying
line.
to teach my kids right now. I had to talk with my senior son yesterday. He has a dream. He's a dream. He's an actor. He wants to be in films on Broadway. He wants to do something really special. And I said, well, that's a dream. That's a great dream. It's not a plan. Because a dream is something that's very unlikely, but it's great. You should have dreams. But that's not a plan. A plan is 80% executable, like 90% executable. Like my plan can get done, for sure. So I want a dream and I want a plan. And my dad, how many times did I hear that from him? Dad, I went pro. The dream and the plan came together. He's like, no, they didn't. You can only play 3 years average in the NFL. Then what are you going to do? So I went to law school while I was playing football. Won 3 Super Bowls while I was going to law school. And but then after I retired, after 18 years, I was 38 years old, a whole lifetime ahead of me. And because I'd gone to law school, opportunities opened up that would have never happened. And now, 18 years later, a whole other career. Because he told me I had to have a plan. So don't ever tell me that your dream and your plan are the same thing. They have to be separate. But have both. I hate when people say, I have a great plan. I said, but do you have a dream? Like, that's good too. They go together. But they're different. And, that's what, to me, I'm trying to tell because my senior in high school, he's got a dream. And he's all for it. He's all in, 100%. I go, well, what's the plan? He's like, I don't need a plan. I'm like, oh boy, I've heard this one before. Yeah. So it's generational, right? It just goes around and around and around. But
Do you ever find yourself knowing that you have to be patient, understanding that at some point in his life, he'll have that plan, and knowing that because you're telling him and you're telling him and you're telling him, telling him that eventually that will stick?
So human nature is to want control. Because if I have control, then I'm safe. And people want to be safe. And so as a parent, you want control because you want your kids to be safe. And it's so hard to learn as a parent that you need to lose. You don't allow them to grow if you control them. Control is really that's a lifetime work. I don't know if I told this one last year, but Bill Walsh, when I first joined the 49ers, and the team would be in like this, and he'd be up presenting. And while he was presenting, there was a camera that was filming him. Did I tell this story last year?
No.
So there's a.
I know the story, but
So he's
go ahead.
filming him, and I just joined the 49ers. Ronnie was there, Joe was there, Jerry Rice was there, Roger Craig. I mean, it was. They'd already won 2 Super Bowls. It was quite a group. And Bill was up front, and they were filming him, everything he did. And then I noticed that as he walked out, the camera followed him down the hall and into the lunchroom. And then, and I'm like, are they doing a documentary or what are they, something special? He goes, no, that's just, Bill does that, And then I thought, that's kind of weird, Kind of like, what does he think? He's like, Abraham Lincoln or something? Like, he's like legacy, like I'm that famous that everyone wants to know everything you do, And I remember telling the people, is he weird? Is he something wrong with him? Or he'd be out of practice and yelling and a camera right there, And so I kind of made fun of it. Then, over time, he talked a lot about integration, to your point, and I thought racial integration, what he's talking about. He was talking about integration in every way that makes you different from each other, socioeconomic, geographic, religion, race, where you're from, what you're interested in, all those things that break people up into little groups that are like each other, to break those down so that you could look each other at 3rd and 10, down by 3, and, fourth quarter in Green Bay, and drizzling rain, and you want to be freezing, never been so cold in your life, you could look at each other, and you were integrated. You had a reason, a heart with each other. And so I noticed that as he talked about that, he talked about it from coaches as well. I wanted my coaches to be that way. And then I saw him start to promote, especially his minority coaches, to head coaching jobs. I want them to be, it was before the Rooney Rule. He was the first.
Right.
And so he was like, I want you to be successful. So what he was doing He was at the height. Bill Walsh was 2 generations ahead of everyone in the league. No one was doing what he was doing, and he knew it. And that's why he'd already won 2 Super Bowls, and if he went 10 more years, he'd won 3 or 4 more. He was at the height of everything that he knew, and he knew he was way ahead. Why was he filming everything? Why was he packaging up all of his plays, all his speeches, everything into one kind of unified toolkit? And how humbled I was when I found out, when I was making fun of him, that what he was doing was he was creating a toolkit to hand to his assistant coaches as they go to be head coaches in the league and said, here's my toolkit. Here's everything that I know, a video history, an audio history, and a paper-based history. All that I have, I want you to have. And then on the way out, one of the great things the story he used to tell me, he goes, and then I told him, I'll see you in the championship game. Think about what that's saying. I know with this toolkit and who you are, I'm going to see you again in the championship game. And he did. I mean, I cursed Bill Walsh because then the Packers were great, and then the Eagles were great, and then it's like and then you see what has happened through the league now because of his spirit of abundance, that I can grow from one. If he would have held everything, he would have been great. One of the all-timers. I'll hold it. It's mine. And it was his. He had come up with it. And instead of holding it, he handed it out. At the height of, at risk. The Packers came back and beat us in the championship game. I saw Brett Favre and I go, Brett, what was the speech that Mike Holmgren used last night? He goes, oh, blah, blah, blah. He goes, that's Bill's big game speech.
Yeah.
He pulled it out right out of the toolkit and gave him the speech. And I was like, this is just crazy. But in today's world, I can't believe how backwards we've gotten. Where in today's world, everything's zero-sum game. It's either mine or yours, and we're going to fight. And when I get it, I'm going to point at you and tell you, too bad. There's limited resources everywhere, but there's a spirit of abundance. You can make 1 + 1 = 3. You can do it in every relationship you own. You have. Not own, but if you ever by thinking about it, what can I bring from it? Can I collaborate? Because if we can come to an agreement rather than a fight, that's going to last. That will last. If we fight and I win, he's going to be thinking, how do I fight him next time? Because I want that back. That's that's our political climate we're in right now for sure. We're fighting, and I get it. And when I get it, I point at you, and then you know what happens? You now built an enemy. You do that over and over and over, you better build a big moat and you better build a super high wall. Because you're going to have people coming at you. But if you can have a spirit of Bill Walsh in abundance, we're going to build with each other. We're going to find common ground. We're going to figure out how we can, and I might not get quite as much, but I'll have enough. And you will too. And now we have an agreement that will last generations. Bill Walsh has passed away now 12 years, 13 years. I go in the Monday Night Football every Monday night, see the teams that are playing Monday night. I watch them warm up. I see the spirit of the team. I see the coaching. And I'm like, they got the toolkit because it's been passed down. It's in the Chargers today, Anthony Lynn. It's in the Rams with McVay. It's in Seattle with Pete. It's in Green Bay. It's been in Green Bay for 2-3 generations. It's in Philadelphia. It's in Kansas City. It's in Baltimore. It's in in Miami. It's in New England. And then you say to yourself, what's that spirit of abundance? What happened with Bill Walsh packaging up everything while people made fun of him like me, and he handed it out at the height of his career? What's the legacy? It's the NFL today. That's why players and coaches now, players and owners are together. That's why coaches look at players differently. It's how they practice. It's how they treat each other. It's not just the plays. And so you guys are the leaders. If every relationship you have, you develop a spirit of abundance in that relationship. Even the one, look, going down the road and someone cuts you off. You can either zero-sum game, we're fighting. Great. You might win. You might lose, but it's not going to be an abundant relationship. Or you can figure out a way in difficult, complicated, even abusive relationship. How can I find abundance here? How can I start to sow seeds? And you guys are the leaders. If 110 people leave this room and start to develop relationships of abundance, it spreads. It's a radiance. And I see what Bill did, and Ronnie and I talk about it all the time. How grateful we were to be in that time. It was like revolutionary in football. In the spirit of abundance. Dwight Clark passes away, tragically a few months ago. But what was the spirit? It was the spirit of abundance that Bill built, that we were drawn to each other. What's the legacy of that? It's not a bunch of guys that were fighting each other in the locker room and like, yeah, we won, but you're a bastard and you did this. No, it is everybody recognizing that it was hard, it was difficult, it was challenging, but we were in it together, and we found integration. We were integrated, and now 30 years later, those feelings are deep. I call Ronnie on something. What can I do? How can I help? I'm going to cry thinking about it. That's the spirit of one guy. 30 years later now, with thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, because of one decision to take the spirit of abundance. I'm sorry, I went too long.
No, you didn't go too long, and I think one of the great things about the spirit.
I said it 5 times too, didn't I? Sorry about that.
Of what he's preaching.
I'm a little emotional about it, but
yeah,
anyway.
but the reason that he's preaching it to you guys is that that's something that, again, as teammates, as he was just demonstrating his abundance, and I've been able to meet some of you, and I know that you have been able to demonstrate your abundance to others. And that's been phenomenal to hear some of your stories. I think one of the great things about what he was saying is that it also took me back to the fact that Bill, coach for one of the greatest coaches of all time, Paul Brown. And Paul Brown was this legend of a coach. And for you guys, it's like, I'm trying to think of a great titan that was a great CEO. Who's the guy?
GE, Jack Welch, maybe?
Jack Welch.
Yeah.
And Bill worked for Paul Brown, and I remember I was on this campus at an event, and Paul Brown walked over and said, "Hey, can you tell your guy?" Because he never talked to Bill. He never even went back to acknowledge how great Bill was. And he goes, "Hey, man, just make sure you tell your guy I like what he's doing." And it told me that even the best, here's Vince Lombardi, here's Paul Brown, trying to think of George Hallis. And you would put those guys up as the pillars of the game of football. And here's a guy that says, "Hey, man, just let him know. Let him know what I think of him."
You're that old?
Pardon me?
You're that old?
I am that old.
Yeah.
Am I that old?
And you're that old. But by the way, I think one of the great things that we all have a responsibility to do is to be able to put ourselves in that situation. At some point, that's why, I'm sitting here, at some point, you get to pass on all the things your dad has taught you to a lot of people for a lot of reasons. And the reason we're here is because Bill did that all the time, every time we're around him. I'm going to open it up for questions because I think it would be great if we can take a couple questions from you guys.
We have a couple of minutes here if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I'm gonna challenge you.
Okay, let me just repeat that so everybody
Yeah.
could hear that. How do you take the competitiveness that shows up in various ways on the football field? How do you transition that into the workplace?
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this because one of the great things that I know that you're thinking about right now is I've had this incredible spirit that lives in me every day. And I know when I walk on that field, there is nothing that will stop you. I woke up this morning, there is nothing stopping me. There is nothing that's not going to allow me to have a great play today. There are moments every freaking day I get jacked up because somebody walked into my life that made my life a little bit better. Made my life a little bit better. And so one of the great things that you get to do that we own in this freaking room, we own that. We own that. Let it show up. Let it show up with your family. Let it show up with your kids. Let it show up with your friends. Let it show up with everything that you do. It shouldn't stop. You might have to say it a little bit different because I know you're feeling. But I also understand that, man, I'm going to compete. You're not going to outwork me. I'm never going to sacrifice something that I've worked all my life for, that I own. He's in private equity. Am I sitting here not trying to compete? Of course. And I hope I get a chance to bring a deal to him.
You just did. Did you know that?
I know. So,
We got to talk about pay.
and so he's got a company that he's working on. And he's like, hey, can you? Sure. Yeah, let's go. Let's get this done. Let's get it done. My point to you is that we have great attributes that are part of our DNA. Now, the hard part is this. You walked into college, and I'm almost positive that first time you walked in, you were sitting there going, oh, what the, how? I don't know about you, but when I walked on the field at SC, and I saw Mosi Tutupu, and I saw Charlie White, and I saw all the great offensive linemen, and I was sitting there going, this is freaking, what am I going to do? I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn. So right now, my son, I'm leaving. The reason I'm leaving this morning because my son is in Austin. He started at a startup here. He was making 100 calls every day. And he used to come home, and he would come home, and he's like, this guy's cussing me out. I'm like, get your what you talking about? Let's go. Let's go. Oh, you don't, this ain't, let's go. Now he's a sales manager, and I'm going to go see him. Let's go. And my point to you is every step of his life, he's got to be a rookie. He's got to be a rookie. You were a rookie when you first came as a freshman. And you learned the playbook. Now, I know this. You learned the playbook quicker than most people can learn their whole playbook in their business. You have critical thinking opportunities every day that you had to make decisions. I run a nonprofit, and sometimes I'm sitting there going, we can't make a decision. Let's go.
That's good.
Think about that. Let's
go.
go. So Everybody in this room, and I know this, don't tell me that anymore about how do I transition. Transition the same way you transition when you first woke up. You transition every day. You transition when you were 5 years old into something. You transition, and by the way, you transition that you're in this room. So that's when I'm in this room and knowing all of you in this room, I breathe greatness. I can smell it. I can smell it. Smell it. And when you smell it and you're around it, your expectations go even higher. So what do you seek out? You seek out the best. Imagine, and I've done this, and the teammate that he just talked about, Harris Barton, when he first came here. Harris Barton was like, man, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I'm done. Let's go. Let's go write some letters. What do you mean? Go write some letters to the suite holders. Go introduce yourself to them. Really? Yes. Go meet them. Go talk to them. Get to know them. The guy's got a Rolodex better than anybody in this valley because of let's go. So everybody in this room has the capability of let's go. Now, I'm going to say this to you because this happens a lot. Oh, shit. You mean I got to talk to him? You mean, oh, you want me to go sit down with an alum? An alum that's been rooting for you? Yeah, go sit down with an alum that's been rooting for you and say, hey, Mick, I need you to help me. You've been rooting for me. I need you to help me. Let's get some advice. Give me some opportunities. Talk to me. He's been rooting for you. He knows you. He's been watching your effort. When I walk on my campus at USC, let's go. Lynn Swan, AD, I can tell you right now, the reason that he's the AD, he's one of the best at let's go. And everybody that knows Lynn, everything that he's done at the university, they love him because they know that they're going to get his best. Even as a rookie, which he was last year, all day long, he was trying to figure it out. To the point where he told me the first couple of days that when he got on campus, he was like, oh no, that's unbelievable. You got to go. My point is that when we get in situations when we're rookies, it is hard to have confidence. It's hard to be a backup. It's hard to sit there and be patient. But you got to learn and you got to develop. You got to find a way to get a skill. And I know this. Trust me. I can give you 10 things tomorrow. 10 things tomorrow. And I have a funny feeling that if you're who I think you are, you're going to try to figure it out. Whether it's playing chess, whether it's playing checkers, you can go sell, and I already know this. I got some boys in the hood, they sell, they're trying to figure it out. I got some buddies in San Quentin, they're trying to figure it out. One of the great things that I find that the guys in San Quentin will tell you, man, they're not stupid. They got caught. And they'll tell you they're even smarter now because you know what? They spend all their time reading. And some of the best people I've met in this world are in there. Some of the worst people in this world are in there. But I can tell you, the reason I went in there, because I want to know the both. I want to know both. Going back to what he said, I want to know the worst of the worst, and that's what Bill was really good at. He could deal with the worst of the worst athlete, and he could deal with the best of the best athlete. But as a coach, imagine you're coaching, and imagine you got to deal with the worst of the worst and the best of the best, and you got to motivate them both. Wow.
Ronnie, thank you.
That you can get done. That's what for me, I get that. So because I have to deal with I've had to deal with the worst of the worst.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
What Ronnie just said, by the way, Andre Iguodala, Warriors, for more contemporary, you guys, has done the exact same thing that Ronnie, you were talking about with Harris. One of the reasons he stayed to play for the Warriors, he has embraced everything around here, and he's gone out of his way to.
Let me just ask that.
Yeah.
So the other thing I would say is when you compete in the football field, you're not going to get anything else like it. Box it up and put it away. Because if you try to repeat it and look for that adrenaline and look for all that action and all that, it's not going to be the same. It's like it was great. But don't try to find it. People keep searching for it, and they search from the wrong places. It's box it up, it's done. Another thing, if you want to compete, it's about yourself. As you grow up and you get older, competition, as you mature, you recognize it's against myself. If I'm competing against someone else, if I'm looking to beat someone else, you're heading the wrong direction. How good can I get? All right? And the ultimate athlete one of the ultimate athletes I've ever been around, there's one next to me, but Reggie White. Reggie was one of the all-time athletes you've ever met, physical specimen, 6'8", about 350, could run, was stronger than everybody. And when I played him, you could hear him coming. You're like, oh, crap. And
He's coming.
and the ultimate competitor, compete. And then when he got to me, wrap me up, big, huge, and then he'd fall, roll over and fall, and let me fall on top of him. You know, how you doing?
That's him.
Reggie, I'm doing all right. Not so good right now, but I'm, generally. A few plays later, hey, so how's your dad? You can be intense. You can be full of adrenaline. You can also be an athlete, and you can be, in the next moment, you can be a friend. You can wear different shoes fast. Trade them out. As you get kids, you got to be a dad, a husband, a cohort, a worker. You got to rage. I'm going to be changing shoes all day long. He is the ultimate at wearing a lot of different shoes all day long. Compete against yourself. Recognize that you got to be athletic. You thought you had to be athletic on the football field? That's nothing to what's coming. And think of Reggie White. I can be an ultimate competitor and a friend in a fraction of a second. I can be the same at the same time.
And Bill Campbell,
He was that way.
that's Bill Campbell.
Yeah.
Bill Campbell can walk into any room, and you could be sitting there, and like I said, all of a sudden, you could be doing up downs. Next thing you know, he's down there talking to Steve Jobs. And my point is, that's what you could do. And everything he said is so right on. You have to box it up. That's behind you. But don't lose sight of all the things you've worked for. You've outworked a lot of people to get here. That's what's so fascinating to me is that we have to learn a new language. It's hard to go in and surrender to say, I don't know.
Humility.
Right?
You better box it up, and then you better get humble. Because you got to start over again. Because I was really good at something, and today, that's gone. I'm not good at anything else.
And by the way, one of the great stories, this guy named Peter Harris, that used to run FAO Schwartz. He was a phenomenal leader running FAO Schwartz. He came to become the president of the 49ers. He tells a story that he meets Steve Jobs. And Steve is like sitting around. I don't want to talk to anybody. Just and somebody says, hey, that's Peter Harris from FAL Schwartz. He goes, I want to talk to him. And so he goes over and he starts asking him all these questions about all this stuff around. So what's it like? How do you do this? How do you do that? The reason he was asking, because here he was being a rookie, trying to figure out all this information. Why? So he can open up Apple stores. Because he wanted the customer to have the same experience as a kid. That the kid could have that experience. I want my stores to have that experience. And so imagine, here was a guy that wasn't even curious about this guy, but then he found out who he was, and he was hungry for knowledge to understand all of that. And that's where you're at right now. Yeah, you couldn't play, I can't do it over here, but now you got to go do it over in this other arena. And in this other arena, man, there's some guys in that arena talk a different language. They dress different. They walk different. But what I've learned, man, I can go play with anybody. BYU, let's go.
Let's go.
Hey,
We got to go, but
We
this
need-
is
we need-
all-time athletes right here.
we need to not get too far behind your schedule for the rest of the day, but this is an honor. Anytime
Thanks,
you get a chance
everybody.
to hear
Appreciate
two
being
Hall of
with you. Good
Famers
luck.
like this.
Thank you guys.
Good luck.